All right, let's get started. So here's the thing. I wanted to do a special call in regards to navigating the summer. And here's why. Because you tend to attract who you are, I tend to attract women who like to drink and socialize in the summer, as do I. But over time, what I learned was this place where I neither felt like I needed to give up alcohol completely or give up any fun or be super restrictive, but also find a place that's still in alignment with my goals. And I will tell you that it took me a really long time to figure this out. So I too, even being in the fitness industry for a really long time, I still would toggle between being very restrictive and then swinging into like overindulgence, drinking too much, the whole thing, starting fresh on Monday. Like I did it. I lived it for a really long time. And when I found this method, Moderation 365, sorry, I'm a little froggy. I was living by myself. I had given up gluten and dairy. I was kind of paleo-ish, but for sure no gluten, no dairy. But I was living by myself, and so it was really easy to live that way. And then just really try to like dial in anytime I was around family or doing anything social. And then I ended up with my partner, who's my partner now, and moved in together with him, who he eats very, very differently than I do. Um, he is technically a pescatarian, but I call him a carbitarian. And at the time, his teenage son was living with us. And so when we went to a grocery store, it was like just, we would come home with just a counter space full of pastries, which I have a weakness for pastries. I have a sweet tooth. And so I realized that I was just eating all these pastries. I felt like I had no control. And so one of the coaches that I've had long term actually created Moderation 365. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up the slide so you guys can see it. And so I went through this course, I went through the training so that I could first learn it myself, and then be able to teach it to others as well. And it takes practice, so just know this. But when you finally get it, it is how I eat 365 days out of the year now. I don't diet. I don't do anything crazy. I do this over the summer. I do it in the winter. And so I wanted you to be able to practice this over the summer. So we're going to go through navigating vacays, barbecues, and booze when you have a weight loss goal. This is the Moderation 365. And what it is a method that helps you learn your own body and how it responds to certain foods so that you can eat healthy and stress-free for good. The idea is not to toggle in and out of this. I'll give you examples of how I use it with clients sometimes. And again, the coach that I learned this from is Jill Coleman. So a lot of these concepts that we're going to talk about came directly from this Moderation 365 course that I took. So why and when would you implement a moderation approach? Well, it's for women who have a long history of diet jumping. If you've done keto, if you've done intermittent fasting, if you're always looking for like that thing that's going to fix it all, right? So you try this and you do it for a while and it works. I get that a lot when clients come to me, they're like, well, I did this and it worked. But then I fell off the wagon and I went back and I kind of gained it all back, right? So the idea is that if you're looking for this thing that's supposed to help you, you're jumping from diet to diet, from strategy to strategy, you haven't created a long-term sustainable approach. So this is a solution to reduce food obsession and ditch the all or nothing approach forever. And people do ask me regularly, do you track food? And my answer is no, not generally speaking. I will touch base with it every now and then, especially as I've been navigating the last couple of years being in perimenopause into menopause. Just kind of like figuring out like, okay, where is my protein? Where is my fiber? And for me, it was fiber. I wasn't getting enough. So I'll touch base with it every now and then. But once I learned how to do this, I really don't log my food. I don't obsess about food. I don't take anything off the table. And the way that it works is that you're using biofeedback tools such as hunger, energy, and cravings instead of relying on having to count and track, thus minimizing the effort and energy behind eating. And it creates a sustainable way to do this. It is great for short-term periods like holidays, like vacations, or for maintenance phases with the ability to implement over the long haul for a sustainable lifestyle. So For me, when I'm working with clients in the beginning, I like to have everybody track their food because I think it is very telling. It's an education. Most people have no clue what they're eating. They think they're eating a certain way. But you have to remember your brain will never remember things the way you think accurately. It will never remember things accurately. So it's either going to make it worse or better. And it will toggle back and forth. So the way that you're remembering it isn't accurate. You really don't have any idea of what you're doing. And so for me, it's always important to have people start with logging food so that they have an idea of like, okay, this is actually what's happening. And then we can see what biofeedback they're getting. We can see like why they may be getting some crashes in the afternoon. We can see like, are they getting enough carbs or too many carbs? We can start to see how their body is responding. So I do like tracking. I do think that there is value behind it in certain periods. In the beginning, when we're balancing hormones, it's great for that. When we are in a boost phase, I think it's great for touching point to make sure that you're getting enough calories over time, because most women will try to veer back to not eating enough, though, cutting out carbs. So we'll touch point those as well. And then during an intentional deficit, I have my clients track food, because that's the only way you're going to know. Is if you are in an intentional deficit, you need to track your food. But I do like to use the moderation approach once I've had somebody start to track food. And then when they're in that like maintenance phase, we go into a moderation approach because it teaches them how to not rely on having to track food. And that in itself is a lesson, because once you track food, you almost use it as like a power tool, like you have to have it. And without it, you don't know how to eat. And the reality is you do. You just have to learn how to trust yourself around food. So I think it's really good for those short-term periods like that. And then once you get to the goal, I think it's great for a sustainable lifestyle approach. What it is not. It is not intuitive eating. And the thing that drew me to this is her being very upfront about this, because intuitive eating, if you're listening to your intuition, you could be mistaking that to biofeedback. And what most women don't realize is that they're getting hormonal biofeedback from their body, but it could be that their blood sugar is off, their digestion is off, their sleep is off. And so they need to balance certain macros out, or maybe the frequency of how they're eating. And what intuitively they think their body is telling them is to just go ahead and eat all of these carbs. My body needs these carbs, right? And so that is very misleading intuitive, because if you don't understand what biofeedback is, again, you don't really know what your body is actually asking for. It is not a broad concept with no practical strategies to help you find your way. So there are actual strategies that I will share some of them with you today, so that you can help find your way, instead of just being like, just intuitively eat whatever and just don't overeat. Like, it's not that. It's also not an excuse to eat like an asshole and then expect to have some physique and health changes. It comes with knowing, I'm just checking, make sure that there's no questions so far popping up. You have to understand that when you eat this way, and this is something that I've always been very vocal about, is that I made a decision long ago that when I went through this, that I would no longer do super extreme things. Like, even I had a practitioner that I worked with last year who really wanted to put me on some very strict dietary protocols. And I said, I'll give you 2 weeks. That's as long as I will do it. And with that, and I like threw back things that I would only be willing to do in that. And the reason for that is that I know I worked way too hard to get to a place where I can do moderation, that the second that you put me in a position where I can't have something, I'm going to think about it all the time. And I didn't want to go back to that life of being super strict. Now, that being said, I know that me eating the way that I do has an effect on my physique goals. I don't have a six-pack, guys. Would I like one? Yeah, kind of. I mean, if I fell into one, that would be great, but it's not my biggest goal. I am lean. I run around 20-21% body fat. I keep that throughout the year for the most part. But I won't have what you see on social media as like this washboard stomach, because I do drink alcohol, and that is the choice that I have made. And so why I'm saying this to you is that you just need to make sure that you're managing your expectations in the choices that you're making. Hopefully that makes sense. No questions so far. Okay. The DISC scale, let's talk about this. The DISC scale is a deprivation to indulgence scale, and it swings pretty wide. Deprivation means I have to be perfect. And I get this a lot from clients where they're like, I had the cookie. I'm like, good. The cookie got me. Or the, what was it? The Kit Kat. I had a client who was just like, the Kit Kat got me. And I was just like, the Kit Kat's fine. Like it's that deprivation of like no alcohol. I've had clients in the last couple of weeks come back and go, I think I just really need to get off alcohol over the summer, or I really need to go through a sugar detox. And my answer is always like, let's get some foundational stuff together first before you do that, because that is deprivation. And the further you swing into deprivation of having to be perfect, you will swing in an opposite direction into indulgence. And indulgence is, I just ruined it. I had too much. I had 3 Kit Kats. And it was a Friday, so I might as well now go all out. And that's that whole start fresh on Monday thing, right? Where on Friday you go to happy hour, you overdo it, and then you figure out, well, I ruined the whole thing. Let me just get it all in over the weekend, and then I'll start fresh on Monday. That's the swing. Both are extremes, and the higher you swing on one side, you will absolutely positively swing equally on the other. It always starts with deprivation. Moderation cuts to the middle. So you are neither depriving, you are also not overstuffing. Now let's talk about total mental load and DNCs. Total mental load means that the answer is discernment. And that means that not every nutrient decision carries the same weight in terms of actual outcome. You guys have probably heard me talk about the nutrition big 3. I used to, and I haven't done it in a while, I used to get on social media and make fun of ketchup. Like, I gotta get rid of my ketchup because it's got too much sugar in it. Like, I promise you, it's not the ketchup that's causing the problem, right? So we like to focus on all of these tiny little things that they may have, they're a consideration, but they're not big impact items. So some of these will probably catch you by surprise, or you may even disagree. So in terms of an actual outcome, things that are a consideration that do not carry much weight: sodium content, type of sweeteners that you use, the type of food or nutrient timing, so meaning the frequency of your food, less important. It does have, it is a consideration, but it's not the big impact item. Supplements and certain fads, intermittent fasting, keto, things like that, those are considerations, but they are not big impact items. The type of carb, I get that a lot. I actually had somebody ask me that earlier today. I was like, okay, well, what do you eat for carbs, right? It's minute, right? We want good, healthy carbs, but like, don't over obsess about it. It doesn't carry as much weight as having balanced nutrition. This is a big one. I take heat for this one, especially being in the midlife arena, is organic, grass-fed, wild-caught versus not. I take a lot of heat for not prepping all of my food, everything from scratch. So healthy convenience food versus making everything from scratch. I get a lot of pushback from people in the industry on that too, telling me that women in midlife are stress sensitive and I should know better and all of these things matter and we should be doing organic. And I'm like, listen, like, that would be great if you have time to do that, but I certainly don't have time to do that. And while it is a consideration, it's not a big dial mover. So is most of the things that I eat organic, grass-fed, and wild-caught? Yes. Is most of what I eat from scratch? I'd say probably half. I'd say half. I cook about half the time. And then half the time, it's as close to, it's minimally processed. So I use, for example, a service called Just Meats, and it is sustainably sourced meats. I think they're out of Utah. It's minimally processed, so there's no extra ingredients in it. But because they process it, it is still considered minimally processed, right? They have to ship it to me. So that's not perfect, but it's pretty darn clean, and it keeps me eating in a way that matters and keeps things in perspective as far as what is the highest impact. So what I want you to take from this is that not everything should be granted the same amount of brain power. Stop worrying about the ketchup and worry about the big 3. Those are the things that we want. We want food behaviors that have high impact, and then we're going to let the rest go. So when we're looking at this, there are what we call DNCs. These are your daily nutritional commitments. And what they do is they take the load off of your total mental load. You have to understand your brain can only handle so many new habits, right? Your brain doesn't like to take on new things. So this is going to take that mental load down to the very, very basics. And these DNCs should be 3 eating behaviors that keep us mostly on track. Mostly on track. They should be enjoyable. So if you don't like them, don't put it on the list. We're going to do these in a minute. So if you have a piece of paper, you might want to grab it. They should be enjoyable. They shouldn't require a lot of effort. And they need to be effective. And by effective, we want nutritional choices that have the most impact on your hunger, cravings, energy, blood sugar. That's what we care about. Those have the most impact. The things that carry the most impact in those things are water, protein, and fiber. It's your nutrition big 3. Now, we also want to have these be implemented without hard rules. And I'll give you examples of what this looks like. And you want to be able to build flexibility in. I know when I work with clients through this to help them come up with their DNCs, a lot of times they're very hard rules. And I'm like, okay, that's the ideal. But then what if this happens? I'm like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, right. Like we need to build some flexibility into that, which your brain is probably going to push back on that a little bit. But we want some flexibility in it. And then as for the rest, you just simply do your best. Okay. Now, here are my DNCs. I've had these DNCs for probably 3 or 4 years now. They were slightly different before that. So I'll show you which one, I'll tell you which one I changed. But I've had these, and it doesn't matter whether I go to Arizona and visit my family, or we go on vacation. These are my DNCs, whether I'm at home or whether I'm vacationing. And if you think about it, we want these DNCs to have effect on blood sugar, energy, cravings, all of those good things. So we're looking at water, protein, and fiber. Those are the things that matter. So for me, the first one is, oh, there's a 3 in there. I have water and my BCAAs first thing in the morning. I take my Yeti or my Stanley with me everywhere I go. And one of the first things I do is find a good water source. So if we are traveling, I'm like, hey, I start looking if it's a hotel that has like a fitness center or they have a water dispenser, I find it because I want to know if I need to go to the store and get water or if it's inside where I'm at. BCAAs, just so you know, are branched chain amino acids. They work for me. We don't talk a lot about them anymore. I know there's been a lot of debate in the fitness space of how effective they are, and a lot of people will say that they're a waste of money. I do not find them to be so. I think that number one, they help me drink water the first thing in the morning when I don't want just plain water. And so I, by nature, will drink more water in the morning to get myself hydrated. Branched chain amino acids are the basic building block of protein. So what they have been, I'm trying to be careful with my words. What we used to say they were great for, which is now being disputed, is that they do help with blood sugar regulation. They do help with hunger. So anybody, if you're ever doing a deficit, you're just kind of like trying to work through some of the hunger issues, I recommend looking at some BCAAs because they will help work through that. They're obviously going to help with hydration. And what we're getting feedback from the people in the industry who say that they're a waste of money now say that if you're getting enough protein in your diet, then you don't need BCAAs. And to that, my response has always been the same, that number one, most people don't get enough protein. And number two, they make me feel better. So I'm not going to stop taking them. So this is a DNC I've had for years. And again, it's easy to implement. I like it because it's flavored and it's effective because I'm hydrating first thing in the morning, which helps regulate blood sugar first thing. So that's my first DNC. The second is that I always plan for protein for breakfast and I don't leave it up to chance anymore. I used to, and then I would get I would get burned. So for example, when I go to Arizona, my family eats very different than the way that I eat. And so sometimes they eat breakfast, sometimes they don't eat breakfast. Sometimes it's a Pop Tart, sometimes it's a muffin or donuts, right? Like, so I never really know. Or even we've gone on vacations, like when we went to Hawaii, I was like, oh, there's going to be meat. There was, but it was very fatty meat. And I was like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. I should have brought something. So now, anytime I travel, I just simply take my protein powder with me. I don't care. No, TSA is not going to think it's cocaine. I promise they won't. Everybody's worried about that. I was worried about it at one point too, but they're not. So I take my protein powder with me. I take my shaker cup, and for breakfast, if I don't have a good protein option, I simply throw my protein powder in my shaker cup with water, and I will slam that, and then I'll have the muffin. I'll have a donut. I'll have whatever option is there, but at least I'm getting 40 grams of protein first thing in the morning. It's easy. I can control it. It's enjoyable because I actually like my protein powder. And it's effective because it's helping regulate blood sugar first thing in the morning, right? So it's keeping my blood sugar even, so that if I just have a bunch of carbs and fat in the morning, you get that blood sugar spike and then a crash. That's why you feel so bad later on in the day. So this is, and also 30, it's been, studies have shown that 30 to 40 grams of protein first thing in the morning actually creates that muscle metabolism, where your metabolism kicks up because that protein is going into the muscle. So that's an easy one for me, and I've been doing that for years too. And then the third one is one that I adopted, and this was probably 3 or 4 years ago when I switched it. I used to, my third DNC was I would have one big ass salad per day or 2 servings of vegetables, because that's the fiber, right? I stopped doing that one because I was having such a hard time breaking all of the raw veggies down. And I was like bloated out to here. I couldn't figure out what was going on. And it's just because my digestive system, as you're going through perimenopause, we don't produce as many digestive enzymes. And so my body just couldn't break down all of the raw veggies. So I switched that one to this one, where now, no matter what I have access to, I simply eat until I'm 80% full. And then I stop. So an example of this is when I go to Arizona, I have my protein for breakfast, right? Whatever that is. And then what I do plan, I still, like, I'll get a rotisserie chicken. I will get some bagged salads. I get other things that I can eat. But if dinner is pizza, guess what I eat? I eat pizza. I just eat until 80% full. And this one's a hard one, and you have to practice it. 80% full feels like I could definitely eat more. So it's not even full, right? So like 100% is I'm full, but not stuffed. 80% is I could definitely eat more. So your brain will start pushing back and being like, oh, eat more. Like you should eat now. Like you're not gonna have time to eat later, or there won't be food later. Right? Like, you'll just feel weird, like you need to keep eating. So it does take practice. But once you do this, you will learn. Like, I had a client that she went to Italy this last year, and she did it. She's like, the entire time I was in Italy, this is what I did. And it was amazing how freeing it was, that I could literally eat whatever I wanted as long as I stopped at 80% full. So you can practice that. So these are the ones that I use. They work for me. They should be easy to implement. Now, here's the thing. We're going to have you do your DNC. So if you have a list, grab it out. Here's what I want you to do first. I want you to make a list of what you would eat, left to your own devices, that is not perfect, but it's realistic. The way that you're eating right now. It's not perfect, but it's realistic. The things that you're doing. What do you eat for breakfast? What's typical for lunch? What's typical for your snacks? What's typical for dinner? Start to kind of write Write those out. And then once you write those out, we're going to go back and I'm going to have you circle the things that have the most impact on blood sugar regulation, energy, hunger, cravings, right? So that's going to be water, protein, fiber, meal timing, things, whatever works for you, things that you're already doing, because we want it to be easy. We don't want you to have to think too hard for it. You can always change your DNCs later. So I want you to circle the things that are most impactful that you are already doing. And then I want you to cross out the things that don't have much impact in terms of outcome. I'm going to give you guys just a second to do this. If you feel like sharing, I would love to see you guys jump in the chat box and figure out like what are some of the DNCs that you think that you could start to create. And I'm going to talk just a little bit as you do that, but feel free to jump in the chat. You'll know that they're your DNCs if you can do them without failure. If you notice that I've had clients do this too, where we pick DNCs and then we come back to see how they're doing and they're like, oh, I forgot about this one or I forgot about that one. And I'm like, then those aren't your DNCs. They can't be hard, fast rules. So like a hard, fast rule would be like a DNC of I'm going to hit 120 grams of protein every single day. Now, could you most days? Yes. Do I 99% of the time? Yes. But can I guarantee that I can do that? No, there's just going to be some days that I don't hit. Does it require a certain amount of mental load to figure that 120 grams out for most people? Yes. So then it's not easy. We don't want hard, fast rules. You want to think in terms of water, protein, fiber. How can you do it in a way that is easy and impactful without a hard, fast rule? So like if you look at the way that I did before with the big ass salad or 2 servings of vegetables, that was actually pretty easy to implement because number one, I could get a salad anywhere. So anywhere that I'm traveling, I could get a salad. And it has impact on fiber, but I'm not counting fiber grams. It's easy to implement. Those are what we're looking for. Let's see. Cindy, is this a list of food or protein grams, fiber grams? So that's what we're talking about, Cindy. So think of it in terms of you want it to be in relation to water. I'll give you another example. We want it to be in relation to the things that have the most impact. So that's going to be water, protein, and fiber, right? So we know that. But I'll give you the example. So remember when I said, let me go back and I'll show you. Right? So if you notice, I didn't put how many ounces of water I drink. I actually don't even say how many ounces or how many grams of protein I'm going to get for breakfast. I don't put hard rules around it. I just make sure like, oh, I could do this one thing. I don't even say protein at every meal because that might not happen. If I'm offered pizza and that's what everybody's having, I don't control that. Right? So don't put, that's what I mean by don't put hard, fast rules or grams. You want to think in terms of broader, like, okay, what's something that I can do? So for me, I this or my Yeti. My Yeti's like 32 ounces. This is like 40, right? So I take either one. I don't care which one, whichever one is clean is what's going. And that's what I drink. And before I get going, I just make sure that I have at least one of those. Now, will I drink more than that? Generally speaking, yes, but I don't put a hard, fast rule around it. Does that help? Got it. Okay. Anybody else? That was good. Good questions. Did you guys come up with any good DNCs? Okay. All right. So in the bigger scheme of everything, what you have to understand is that moderation equals satisfaction. You need to be satisfied all day long. You need to actually like the foods that you're eating. If you're white knuckling your way through the day, you're not going to make it very far, because then you're going to feel a need to, like, I got to go do this thing to get some relief from this crappy ass food that I'm eating that I'm supposed to eat. Right. So, what we want to do is put things on a scale from 1 to 10. What we're looking for is an 8 in terms of satisfaction and in terms of what you're eating. I'm good. I'm not stuffed. I'm not overstuffed. I'm not feeling deprived. I'm not feeling needy. I'm none of that. I'm simply good. And that's what it feels like. I'm good. Could I do more? Sure, but I'm good. Could I eat another half a donut? I could, but I'm good. We want an I'm good feeling. Remember, we're trying to cut to the middle. When you're doing this, you want to also understand that meals do not happen in isolation. So if you notice, my DNCs, 2 of them start in the morning, because what you do in the morning affects the rest of the day. What you eat for breakfast affects how you feel and the decisions you will make for lunch and the decisions you'll make snacking. Never fails when clients come back and initially, when they hit their protein and fiber goals, are like, I'm not hungry at all. And then all of a sudden, later on down the road, they're like, I don't know, it's kind of weird. I'm just kind of snacking more than I used to. It's kind of weird. I'm just snacking on crackers and chips and stuff. And when we go look at their food log, protein and fiber have gone down. And so they're snacking in the afternoon because their breakfast and lunch wasn't lined up right. So meals do not happen in isolation. So I would take your DNCs and steer them towards the first part of the day so that you set up the rest of the day for moderate success, right? And here's how you can increase satisfaction throughout the day. You can use dietary fats as condiments. If you like a little bit of avocado to your salad or your food, add a little bit of avocado. A little bit of, now keep in mind, dietary fats come with a lot of calories, so don't get crazy. But if you want a little cheese on your salad, you want a little cheese on your sandwich or whatever, right? Like, those dietary fats can be served as condiments and they add satisfaction to it. I have a client that she's actually been with me for 8 years. She's the longest client I've ever had. Love her. But when she first started with me, she said point blank, I will do literally anything you tell me, but you cannot take away my coffee and creamer ever. I was like, cool, we're going to do just fine. Because it's what she loves. She loves that, like, dietary fat, that cream in her coffee is just very, very satisfying. So you can look at things like that. Dietary fat's a good one. You also look for the taste factor and the experience that you want. So for a lot of people, I'm this way, the whole, like, I want something sweet after I eat, something chocolate after a meal. Is there a taste that you want? For me, yes, it's generally chocolate, but I also want a certain mouth feel, whether it be crunchy, smooth, creamy, frothy, right? If you pay attention, you'll see what you find very satisfying. And here is what I learned about myself, is that while I do like something sweet, generally speaking, after kind of lunch and dinner, sometimes, not always, I used to do like little chocolate squares, just a little piece of chocolate. And sometimes that'll be satisfying. But what I learned about myself is that, generally speaking, when I want that, like, sweet, I like cake. I like pastries. It's a mouthfeel. I want, like, that cakey mouthfeel. And so what would happen is I would have these pieces of chocolate thinking that they were going to satisfy, but they didn't. And so then my body was still going, now I want something else. And then I would keep snacking. And so a couple things that I've done to create that mouth feel. Should have grabbed it. One, I found a protein bar that is not satiating at all. I don't find protein bars to be very satiating. They just aren't to me. But the one that I found has a brownie mouthfeel to it, and it's just sweet enough. So a lot of times after lunch, I'll grab one and I'll stick it on my desk and I'll just nibble on it. And because it has that chocolate and the mouthfeel of a brownie, it's very satisfying. I'm good with it. The other thing that I'll do, and I don't do it as much anymore, because I'm lazy and don't like to cook, but I will use paleo muffin recipes, and I'll make muffins or little breads or whatever. And because in paleo recipes, they don't use sugar, they use honey or syrup or bananas, things like that. They're not as sweet. So they don't trigger that need for more sweet, but they're just sweet enough and they give you that mouthfeel of cake, of a muffin. And I like those too. And sometimes I'll just have like half of one because I just want enough to give me that mouthfeel. So start paying attention. Like, what is it that you want? Is it crunchy? Is it smooth? Is it chocolatey? Is it more savory? Is it frothy? Like, what is it you want? And most people will kind of steer more towards either more fatty type stuff or more like cakey type stuff or sweet type stuff. Figure out who you are and then figure out the things that are going to help satisfy that. Another big one is making the weekdays look more like the weekends and vice versa. And we're going to talk about alcohol in regards to this because this comes up quite a bit too. It came up today and I want to share it with you guys because again, I did the same thing. Is we like to try to think I'm going to be really good during the weekday and only do these other things on the weekend. I'm going to use alcohol as an example. I'm going to stop drinking during the week and only drink on the weekend. But the problem with that, it may work for you, but generally speaking, what will happen is you will drink more on the weekend to get it all in. Because you start on Friday, and then by Saturday, you're like, okay. And then on Sunday, you're like, oh, where maybe you don't normally drink on the week on Sundays. You're like, tomorrow I gotta not drink. So you get it all in. So you end up drinking more than you would have had you just said, you know what, I'm gonna limit myself to a certain amount for the entire week. I'm gonna open that up. And so that's one of the things I do. I used to do that. I'm not gonna drink during the weekday. And then I would like just drink way too much on the weekends. Right. So now it's like I give myself, I'm down to like 3 to 4 per week. It's gonna be today. I'm gonna have a drink today. I decided I haven't had a drink since Saturday. Right. I used to drink every day. Now I drink 3 to 4 drinks per week. And that works for me. Most of the time I'll have one during the week and then I'll have a couple on the weekends because my brain never feels like it can't have it. I can on any given day decide that I want to drink, but I just tell myself, stay in this little box, stay here. And that seems to work. So you want to do the same thing with food, right? You don't want to just be super, super clean Monday through Thursday, Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, you're like, I got to relax a little bit because all that was so hard, right? Make your weekend look more like Monday through Thursday. And the easiest way to do that is to control your breakfast and lunch. Start early in the day. The same thing with exercise, right? Like, don't just do your exercise Monday through Thursday or Friday. Exercise on the weekend. Start to make them look a little closer together, even though they'll probably never look exactly the same. You don't want them to be vastly different because remember, the more you swing over here, the higher you're going to swing on the other side. And just think about it, like how that works for you right now. You probably can see that happening in your life right now. So what happens if you overeat? Number one, allow room for practice. This is a practice. I'm telling you right now, you are going to mess this up. You are going to overeat, you are going to overdrink, and that's how you learn. I did the same thing. This took me a long time to really get to a point where I could literally be around any food, and very rarely will I overindulge. It still happens because I'm a human being who gets stressed and has cravings sometimes. So it happens to me. It's going to happen to you, but it happens pretty rarely at this point. So the goal is not to have it never happen. The goal is to have it happen a lot less than it used to. So allow for that practice. Understand that the more satisfied we are, the less likely you are to binge in moments when your willpower is drained. The goal is to stay satisfied on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Stay satisfied in the morning, stay satisfied all day long. I eat the same breakfast almost every single day because it checks all the which includes the fact that I like it. It's delicious. That's what you want. I love my breakfast. I love my protein shakes. I love my lunches and my dinners mostly, right? So you want that. You want to be satisfied. Now, what happens when you do overeat is because there's so much emotion attached to this, what will happen is your brain will make it into something that it's not. It was to this, you're to that, you don't have any control, and you'll start to beat yourself up. You feel guilt, you feel shame. What's wrong with me? Like, take all of that and put it on the shelf because it's not useful. What you want is to learn how to evaluate and be clinical and less critical. And how you do that is a 3-step process. The first thing is you go, okay, what is it that I'm doing that's working? For me, when I evaluated my DNCs, I realized that the water and the protein were working. What didn't work was the salad. So I want you to look at what you're doing, and sometimes it'll feel like you can't find the thing that's working. There's always something that's working. Figure out like, hey, I set myself up for this and this kind of worked, and then go into what didn't. When you look at where you overate, where did it veer off track? What didn't work? Did you try a strategy and it didn't work? Did you fail to plan? Like, whatever it is, what didn't work about what you were doing and why did you veer off? And then simply look at it and go, okay, if the same situation comes up again, and it will, what am I going to do differently next time? You can't just tell yourself, I'm going to do better, because you will not do better unless you do something differently. So when you set it up, go, okay, I tried this didn't work. What am I going to do differently? So maybe, for example, you could say, I know I was going to happy hour and I wanted to be very satisfied beforehand. And so, and I have clients that do this, is they're like, so what I did is I had a protein bar before I went. But then as soon as I got there, what worked was that it was easy and I was satisfied when I walked into the building. What didn't work was that as soon as the waitress came around with a thing of chips and salsa, and I started my first drink, I lost my damn mind and I started eating and I got caught up in the whole thing. And then before you know it, I was 3 margaritas deep, right? So then you look at that and go, okay, what worked was that the protein bar was easy, but it wasn't quite satisfying enough. So what will I do different next time? So the next time you could say, okay, well, maybe I just need to slow it down a little bit. This is a big clue for people who drink out at restaurants, or if you're going out to places where they're serving alcohol, is maybe you go, okay, when I sit down, I'm going to bypass the chips. And the first thing I'm going to do is order a seltzer or soda water with some lime, lemon. I'm going to order something that comes in a drink glass that has bubbles in it, that hydrates me and starts to fill my stomach. Those bubbles kind of fill your tummy in, and it gets served in a drink glass. So you don't feel like a weirdo. So what you can do is be like, you know what, I haven't decided yet. So can you just bring me a soda water or whatever with a twist or whatever you want to order, right? And then they're going to bring it to you in a drink glass. Nobody's going to even pay attention to it. And all you did was slow things down. And if all you did was drink one less drink, you win. So you go, okay, that worked. That slowed me down. And then I didn't eat as many chips. And then I had one less drink. That's success. That's how you evaluate. Does that make sense? All right, guys. Fire away. What questions do you have? You can either put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself and jump in. Questions? Nope. Okay. I think we're good. Okay, so here's your challenge for you, is I want you to sit down and write out, do the exercise. So the first step is to write down what you're currently doing without making it, thanks, Cindy. Write down what it is that you're doing. That's neither perfect nor overdone. Like, just write down what you're doing. And then I want you to pluck out the things that you go, okay, I need to focus on protein, water, fiber, like pluck those out that like, this is easy for me. This is easy for me. Remember, you can always move your DNCs. You can always make them more challenging, keep them easy. Pluck out the things you're already doing and go this one and this one and this one. These are all things that have a high impact. And then you're going to look at what's left and things that don't have impact on hunger, energy, cravings, blood sugar balance. You're going to cross them out. The rules that you have in your head about what you need to be doing, you're going to cross those out. It doesn't mean you're not going to do them. It just means that they're not on the list. They're not on the commitment list. These are not like, I'm going to try to list. These are commitments, right? Commitments that are easy. So you're going to pluck those out. And then you're going to pick 3 of the ones that you think have the highest impact that you're already doing. And you're going to start there. You go, these are my daily nutritional commitments. I'm going to start here and see how I do. Wendy, did you have a question?
I do.
Yeah.
My husband and I work together and we usually go out for lunch every day.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a challenge for me because okay, what am I going to eat for dinner then? We don't always know what dinner is, but eating out is a tough one. I'm having a hard time juggling that.
Mm-hmm. So what's your question? Before I answer.
Well, I guess how do you keep moderation? I mean, I do try to watch what I'm ordering, making sure I'm getting the protein in there, but we're still eating out. And I know it's not good, but I also hate packing lunches in the morning. I hate it because I'm in your situation where I'm eating this way and he's eating that way. So sometimes just going out to lunch is easier, but keeping moderation is somewhat of a challenge.
For sure. So what I would suggest is like, listen, and you and I talk, like, it's like, we want to lean towards protein. We want to lean towards vegetables. You can still do that, right? But if he wants Indian food and you're just like, oh, like, or something to where you're just like, I don't even know, like, yeah, because again, like Michael loves carbs. He loves all these things. Like he loves Italian food. He loves, you know what I mean? And so I've had to learn how to navigate, like, and learn to love meatballs and vegetables because sometimes that's where we're going to go. But sometimes we end up at pizza. And I'm like, well, there's no protein there. So I can't commit to a protein goal off of that. Now, most days I eat 180 grams of protein. But my commitment, no matter what, is that I stop at 80%. That I can control no matter what I'm eating. So for you, what I would do is circle around that idea, unless you can say, I will make sure that it's protein forward. If you feel like you have the control to do that, then you can, but I think that's where you're going to run into trouble. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I repeated myself.
So I would circle around the idea of like, no matter what, I'm just going to practice eating 80%. Like I said, like the client I had that was in Italy, and she was there for like 3 weeks, right? And she was just like, oh my God, like, of course it's like pizza and gelato and like wine, you know what I mean? And she's like doing all this stuff. And she's like, she came back, she lost weight because she was walking. And also she was like, every time, and it's like these big meals, right? And they're serving you all this food. She's like, I just realized that there was so much of it that I could just stop at 80%. And that's what she practiced. And for me, that's an easy one in terms of no matter where you are and what is being served, you have control over that. Or it's something you can learn. Circle around that one. But I wouldn't put a hard rule around lunch. And then I would still lean towards protein. So like when Michael and I go out, I still lean towards protein and veggies.